June 6, 1968. A patrol from the 1st Infantry Division moves up on the body of a North Vietnamese soldier near the Cambodian border. He is sprawled face down beside his AK-47. The receiver of the rifle is peeled open like a metal flower. There are no bullet wounds on the body, no shrapnel, no blast burns from anywhere except the rifle itself. The man killed himself when he pulled his own trigger. The bullet that did it was a 7.62 by 39 mm cartridge that should have produced about 45,000 pounds per square inch of chamber pressure when it fired. Instead, it produced 250,000. The receiver came apart, the bolt traveled rearward at supersonic velocity, and the soldier died before his body hit the dirt. The cartridge was placed in his magazine months earlier by a Special Forces team operating under a top-secret program called Project Eldest Son. That is the part of the war you weren't told about. By 1968, both sides were rigging weapons. Both sides were rigging bodies. Both sides knew the other side's soldiers would, sooner or later, pick something up. This is the story of the deadliest rule of the Vietnam War. And the one nobody told you the Americans were breaking, too. The rule was the first thing every replacement heard at in-country orientations at Long Binh, Cam Ranh Bay, and Da Nang. Instructors hammered it into men who had been on Vietnamese soil for less than 72 hours. Don't touch what you didn't bring with you. It was not folklore. It was a survival statistic. United States Army medical records covering January 1965 through June 1970 show that mines and booby traps caused 11% of all Army deaths and 15% of all wounds in the 1st Marine Division in the second half of 1968. The figure was 57%. More than half of every wounded or killed Marine in those 6 months was hit by something on the ground or near it. Not a bullet, not a mortar. The deadliest of those traps weren't on the trail. They were the things that looked valuable enough to grab. There were 6 categories. Every infantryman in Vietnam was warned about all of them. The 6th one is the one nobody talks about. The first category was rifles. In 1966 and 1967, the M16 was failing in the jungle. Carbon fouling, unchromed chambers, wet ammunition powder. The rifle was jamming in the middle of firefights, and Marines on Hill 881 North were found dead with their cleaning rods stuck in the bore. They had been trying to clear malfunctions when they were overrun. The AK-47 didn't jam. American troops knew this. The Viet Cong knew that American troops knew this. So, the VC started leaving rifles where Americans would find them. The standard rigging was simple. Pull the pin from a Chinese stick grenade or a captured M26. Place the grenade under the rifle's buttstock. The weight of the rifle holds the safety lever down. When an American picks the rifle up, the lever springs free. 5 seconds later, sometimes less, because field-modified fuses ran shorter, the man holding the rifle is dead. More elaborate versions used a tripwire from the rifle to a 105 mm artillery shell buried 5 to 10 m away. The first man dies when he lifts the weapon. The second blast is timed to catch the medic running forward. The threat became severe enough that MACV issued Directive 381-24 in 1968, expressly prohibiting Allied soldiers from carrying captured enemy weapons. The official reason given was communist bloc quality control. The directive warned that captured weapons may blow up in the user's face. That was the cover story. The real reason was that the United States was sabotaging captured weapons, too. We'll come back to that. The second category was bodies. Every American patrol in Vietnam had standing orders to recover their dead. The North Vietnamese understood this. They understood it the way you understand a habit in someone you've watched closely for years. So, they started rigging the bodies. The standard method was a fragmentation grenade, pin pulled, lever held down by the dead man's torso. When a recovery team rolled the body to check for identification or to place him on a poncho, the lever sprang free. The grenade detonated in the recovery team's faces. In some cases, the rigging was done by VC sappers between contact and recovery. American troops would drive an enemy unit off a position, take their wounded out under fire, and return hours later only to find that the bodies they had been forced to leave behind had been visited in the dark. The most extreme case the Marine Corps ever documented happened on Hill 881 North during Khe Sanh. February 25, 1968. Bravo Company, 1st Battalion. 26 Marines walked into a coordinated NVA ambush on a ridge they had patrolled 20 times before. 27 Marines were killed. The bodies could not be recovered. They sat in contested ground for 40 days. When the recovery team finally reached them, the standard operating procedure had already been written by every unit that had walked into a similar moment. You don't touch the body. You throw a grappling hook with 50 feet of rope. You take cover behind whatever solid. You pull. If the body was rigged, the trap goes off into the dirt. If it wasn't, you go forward. The 25th Infantry Division formalized the procedure in a lessons learned report in 1966. By 1968, every infantry company in I Corps had at least one grappling hook welded from rebar. The men who carried them rarely talked about why. The third category was souvenirs. Every American soldier in Vietnam, like every American soldier in every war America has ever fought, wanted to bring something home. NVA flags, pith helmets with the red star, Ho Chi Minh sandals cut from old tires, the kind of object you could put on a shelf in Wisconsin and tell a story about for the rest of your life. The Viet Cong understood this with the precision of an enemy who had studied his opposition. In an abandoned hooch, an NVA flag would be tacked to the wall, the top corners pinned solidly, the bottom corners wired to a friction pull fuse hidden in the thatch. When a soldier yanked the flag down to fold it into his cargo pocket, the wire pulled and a delay pencil started its countdown. In overrun bunkers, displays of helmets and belt buckles were arranged in tempting rows. One of them, sometimes more, was wired through detonating cord to a buried 105mm shell. Disturbing the display detonated the charge. The Marine Corps published a pamphlet in 1969, Mines and Booby Traps, and devoted explicit space to the warning. The exact language: don't pick up or touch what appear to be attractive souvenirs. The VC and NVA prey upon the natural curiosity of Marines and their desire to take home a souvenir. Beware. That souvenir is most likely a booby trap. 98% of the materials in enemy booby traps were of American origin. Dud artillery shells dug up from American bombardments, discarded ration cans, soda cans, trash. The Viet Cong were turning American garbage into the weapon that killed Americans. 98.5% of the locally produced VC explosive devices were anti-personnel. The remaining 5% killed vehicles. Everything in the 95 was designed to kill the man who picked the wrong thing up. The fourth category was the one that broke the rules of war. The wounded enemy trap was a VC fighter, often actually injured, who lay motionless among the dead with a grenade held against his own body. Pin pulled. Safety lever pinned beneath his ribs. When an American moved to check the body for intelligence or to render aid, the rolling motion released the lever. The man who set the trap died with the man he killed. This is where the moral weight of the war pressed hardest on the men fighting it. American doctrine, American training, and American ethics all required that you secure prisoners and treat the wounded, including enemy wounded. The VC had weaponized that requirement. By 1968, in some American units, a wounded enemy combatant was no longer approached by an American medic. He was approached by a rifleman with a grappling hook. The grappling hook policy was never officially written down at the MACV level. It evolved at the company level. Squad leaders wrote it into their own SOPs. Platoon sergeants enforced it. Battalion commanders quietly approved. You learn what works when the alternative is your own funeral. The fifth category was the one the intelligence officers cared about. Documents, radios, map cases, anything that might tell American intelligence what the enemy was planning. The pressure on infantry units to recover this material was immense. MacVes, 2 sections ran on captured intelligence. Every patrol leader knew that finding a map or a codebook might be the most important thing he did all month. The VC knew that, too. July 8, 1970. An OH-6A Loach helicopter from the 11th Brigade Aviation Section killed 2 enemy soldiers in Quang Ngai Province. The pilot saw documents scattered on the ground beside the bodies. He landed. A crew member retrieved 2 bags of documents safely. Then, the pilot saw a 3rd bag. He landed again. The crewman climbed out, picked up the bag, and was hauling it back into the cabin when the bag exploded. The aircraft went up in flames. Captain John Wadsworth was killed instantly. 2 crew members were wounded. The Loach was a total loss. The official AmeriCorps Division report on the incident says it could not determine whether the bag itself was rigged or whether the crewman had stepped on a separate device. In the field, the distinction did not matter. The result was the same. In tunnel systems around Cu-Chi, the same logic applied. Tunnel rats, small American soldiers who crawled into the underground complexes with a flashlight and a pistol, found rooms staged with abandoned radios, gas masks, and uniforms. Lifting any of those objects often released a tilt fuse. The detonation collapsed the chamber. The American died in the dark in a tomb of his own clay. Harold Roper, who served as a tunnel rat in 1966, said it more simply than any official document ever would. I felt more fear than I've ever come close to feeling before or since. The sixth category is the one I told you to wait for. It is the rule that did not exist in any field manual. The one nobody briefed at orientation. The one that would have changed the war if anyone in Washington had been willing to say it out loud. The United States was running its own version of every trap the Viet Cong had built. Project Eldest Son began in 1967. Green Berets from MAC SOG quietly disassembled captured 7.62 by 39 mm cartridges, the round used in the AK-47. They removed the propellant. They replaced it with high-explosive match to look identical to the original powder. They reassembled the cartridges. They mixed them back into captured ammunition stockpiles, which were then deliberately abandoned where Viet Cong recovery teams would find them. When a VC fighter loaded one of those magazines, his rifle waited. When he pulled the trigger in a firefight, the rifle exploded in his hands. By the end of 1968, MAC-VSOG had infiltrated 11,565 sabotaged 7.62 cartridges into enemy supply chains. 556 12.7 mm heavy machine gun rounds. 1,968 82 mm mortar shells. When an 82 mm mortar shell with sabotage propellant was dropped into a Viet Cong tube, the entire mortar disintegrated. 9 NVA soldiers died at Ban Mi, Thuot on July 3, 1968, when one rigged shell took out their entire crew in a single detonation. The MACV directive that prohibited American soldiers from using captured weapons, Directive 381-24, was not really about communist bloc quality control. It was about not accidentally arming an American with one of the rifles his own military had sabotaged. The cover story was so successful that veterans believed it for 40 years. There are myths in this story, too. They get repeated in books and on television, and they should be cut from the record. There is no verified primary source documentation that the bodies at landing zone X-ray were rigged after the battle. There is no evidence the Viet Cong systematically poisoned wells. The mercury switch fuse in a pith helmet appears in odd manuals as a possibility, but no documented incident involving an American soldier killed by one has surfaced in the open record. The truth was bad enough without inventing more of it. The truth is that for the entire ground war in Vietnam, every American soldier was operating inside a deliberately engineered trap network designed to weaponize his own habits, his own ethics, and his own desire to bring something home to show his children. 11% of all Army deaths, 15% of all wounds, 57% of one Marine division in 1/2 of 1 year. The rule the men learned in country was true. Don't touch what you didn't bring with you. The man who died at the Cambodian border on June 6, 1968, pulled his own trigger because his side and our side both believed the same thing. The deadliest weapon in Vietnam was the one that looked safe enough to pick up. He didn't bring his cartridge with him. We did.